Before we dive into the story, if content like this resonates with you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts. Pushpin, every interaction from you helps us grow and continue bringing you more real, heartfelt stories. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. I sought no solace from him. I didn't even go to be noticed. I simply sought a place to unravel. A refuge where no one would inquire about the reasons behind my disarray. Perhaps that is the reason it unfolded as it did. Calm, unhurried, and entirely different from what I believed I required until I ultimately surrendered. Before we embark on this journey, if you visited us in the past and find resonance in these tales, be sure to show your support by liking and subscribing. Supporting the channel has never been simpler, ensuring you stay updated for the next installment. Welcome to all newcomers. I trust this will bring you pleasure. Let us commence. I offered him more than I should have, and deep down I was aware of it. I simply couldn't bring myself to accept it. As I stepped through his door, those were the very first words that escaped my lips. I never intended for those words to escape my lips. My arrival here was never part of the plan. Yet, as the night unraveled in a way I never anticipated, I found myself behind the wheel, lost in thoughtless motion. And in an unexpected twist of fate, it was his street that I found myself on. He made no inquiry about the tears that fell as I sat on his porch beneath the midnight sky. He remained silent as I strolled by and took my seat at the familiar kitchen table, a piece of furniture I recalled from a time when I was too small to touch its surface. He placed water on the stove as he always did, patiently waiting for me to be ready. That sentence slipped out before I even laid a finger on the tea. There it remained, cooling in silence, steeped in the mysteries I struggled to articulate. He sat opposite me, exuding that familiar tranquility that once reassured me that the world was not crumbling, even in its chaos. I attempted to contain my feelings, yet the stillness only intensified the turmoil within me. The walls, the mug, and the soft tick of the kitchen clock all conspired in their quiet presence. Everything seemed unnervingly calm, as if the room held its breath, anticipating my descent into chaos. He remained silent, and that only exacerbated the situation. I allowed him to articulate all the appropriate sentiments. I murmured, as if I were oblivious to his true intentions. I ran my fingers through my hair, wishing the gesture would divert attention from the constriction in my chest, yet it proved futile. It brought to mind how his cologne lingered on me, an unwelcome reminder I wished to forget. I allowed myself to think it held significance. I admit my mistake. Daniel finally rose, neither suddenly nor with any hint of compassion. He glided silently through the shadows. He strolled over to the cabinet, retrieved a second mug, and filled the kettle again, as if determined not to let my chaos dominate the entire space. My gaze lingered on the table. In certain spots, the surface bore the Daniels of my recollections. A small chip lingered near the edge, a remnant of that moment when a glass slipped from my grasp during one of those uncomfortable family dinners. The comfort of familiarity only deepened the pain. A sense of not belonging enveloped me. Yet there was an undeniable reluctance to part ways. As he came back with the tea, I found myself unable to meet his gaze. I merely murmured my apologies. I regret my decision to be here. He knelt beside me in silence, his hand resting softly on my shoulder, a mere touch, nothing more. Initially, my entire body tightened, not due to any sense of wrongdoing, but rather because the kindness felt overwhelming. Though I felt unworthy of kindness in that moment, I chose to remain where I was. With my eyes shut tight, I embraced the darkness. For a moment that evolved into something more prolonged, neither rest nor comfort, merely a stillness I had denied myself for weeks. As I finally turned my gaze towards him, I intended to offer an explanation. I intended to provide him with an explanation for his unexpected appearance here. All I expressed was my uncertainty about where to turn next. By the time I became aware of it, the tea had turned cold. I had not laid a finger on it. He had not either. We remained in our familiar spots, surrounded by the same atmosphere, enveloped in the same stillness. His hand had departed from my shoulder some time ago, Yet the stillness lingered not upon my skin, but in the room, as if the space between us still held on to that moment. The old refrigerator emitted a familiar creak, while the clock softly ticked in the background. My heartbeat had ceased its frantic pounding, yet it remained in a state of unease. I despised the way I felt so diminutive, how that sensation was all too recognizable. He rose at last, not in haste but with a certain stillness. The chair's legs grated against the tile as he shifted, the noise causing me to flinch more than I intended. The guest room remained prepared, he redoubled, as if he were addressing the clock rather than me, suggesting that if one wished to rest, now was the time. I acknowledged with a nod, yet remained still. He refrained from pressing forward. As he began to turn away, a subtle tug stirred within me, quiet yet profound, that familiar constriction behind the ribs that arises when someone you never knew you relied on begins to drift away. I extended my hand and brushed against his arm, neither to impede him nor with enough strength to grasp, merely to create a moment of stillness. He halted, casting his gaze downward. Instantly I felt absurd, overly theatrical and laid bare, yet he remained close. I lingered for another second, perhaps two, before finally releasing my grip. "Will you stay?" I inquired, my gaze averted from him. He hesitated before responding. I detected the faint tremor in his breath, a whisper of uncertainty, yet undeniably present. "It won't take long," I added, "merely a minute, that's all." He finally nodded, then pulled out the chair once more, this time not across from me, but beside me, close enough to feel his presence, yet not touching, not crowding. I gazed down at the ground beneath me. He gazed into the void. Silence enveloped us, yet an unspoken change lingered in the air. Subtle, gradual, but undeniably present. I reclined a bit in the chair, my palms resting firmly on my thighs, attempting to soothe the restless part of me that had forgotten how to remain still. "It's serene in this place," I redoubled almost instinctively. He remained silent, yet I sensed his attention was fully engaged. A prolonged silence enveloped us. The room seemed to pause, not in a hollow silence, but in a way that enveloped you, allowing you to inhale deeply for the first time in hours. My tea had remained untouched for what felt like an eternity. Neither of us seemed inclined to alter that reality, despite my initial doubts about his feelings. He positioned himself at a distance that allowed me my solitude, yet remained near enough that even the smallest movement could bridge the gap that lingered between us. I didn't shift, not intentionally, yet at some moment I found myself leaning back in the chair. I shifted subtly, allowing my elbow to find its place on the armrest, my shoulder leaning in his direction. It was not merely a maneuver. It wasn't even a matter of awareness. Perhaps it was the pull of gravity, or perhaps it was the sweet embrace of relief. He observed. His body went still, not tense, not uncomfortable, but aware. I allowed my head to tilt gently toward him, just enough to feel the pull of the night without fully committing, as if the darkness itself was guiding me closer. "I find myself revisiting it," I murmured, my tone weary and subdued. "All that I overlooked, all that I allowed to unfold." He remained silent. He refrained from asserting that I was mistaken. It was an unexpected revelation, one that dawned upon me only in its absence. "I wasn't foolish," I murmured, as if to reassure myself. I yearned to convince myself that it wasn't what it truly was. He exhaled softly through his nostrils, neither in agreement nor in sympathy, but rather something more subdued than either. "I believe I was aware," I redoubled. I preferred to leave it unnamed to preserve its essence. He cast a fleeting look in my direction, yet my gaze was elsewhere. I found myself gazing at the ground, or perhaps at the void itself. His face was not what I desired. I required the room. A minute slipped by, perhaps longer, and then almost unconsciously, I leaned a bit closer to him. Neither a fall nor a collapse. For a fleeting moment my shoulder brushed against his, nothing beyond that. I averted my gaze, offering no explanation. I allowed it to unfold. He remained still. The silence that lingered between us, once heavy with shame, began to transform. It no longer felt devoid of substance. It was as if I had been granted a reprieve, liberated from the need to clutter it with justifications or regrets. We lingered in that moment, a quietude enveloping us, devoid of drama or words, a serene stillness that demanded nothing in return. My eyes fluttered closed, not from slumber, but from the lingering anticipation. As the stillness enveloped me at last, I had no intention of drawing nearer. I wasn't seeking anything at all. I longed for a presence that would remain, and for the first time he stayed. I couldn't tell how much time had passed while I lay there, but when I finally opened my eyes, he was already gazing at me. He maintained his gaze, unwavering, neither shifting nor clearing his throat, nor feigning ignorance of his lingering stare. He remained there, utterly motionless, entirely absorbed, and I found myself unable to divert my gaze. The absence of a smile, the lack of an invitation, yet the atmosphere in the room had shifted. He seemed changed, or perhaps it was I who had shifted. Perhaps a part of me had at last ceased the charade of requiring additional time. The distance that once held significance now felt devoid of respect. It seemed incomplete. I rose deliberately, allowing my legs to shift in his direction. He echoed the motion subtly, just enough to be noticed. I reached for him, not his hand but his face, and as my fingers brushed against the edge of his jaw, the silence shattered like fragile glass. Not a single word escaped his lips as I leaned in closer. He was not obligated to. We kissed, not out of hesitation, but as if years of silence had condensed into a single breath. It was a kiss that transformed recollections, one that sought no consent, for it was already aware of the response. He was a blend of all I sought to leave behind, a paradox of comfort and peril intertwined in a single exhale. His hand cradled the curve of my neck, and as my body leaned into his, he remained unyielding. He drew me nearer. I moved closer as if pulled by something ancient, a familiarity I couldn't name. My knees drew nearer, narrowing the distance that separated us. The table dug into my back, yet I remained unfazed. Comfort was not on my mind. I found myself contemplating further. He kissed as if he understood my longing to surrender to another, and I kissed him with a reckless abandon, indifferent to who might discover us in that moment. His touch was steady, and though I couldn't read his thoughts, I felt understood, ascending my spine, and encircling my sides, as if he were etching a memory he wished to hold on to forever. I sensed the space between us dissolved into something wordless, something tender and unspoken, and then descending further. His shirt gathered beneath my fingers, yet I made no move to smooth it out. My attention wasn't on the layers, it was solely on the warmth, the intimacy of the moment. My hands pressed down upon him, seeking a tangible connection. He moved subtly beneath me, prompting me to adjust, my body clinging closer to his. We had lost our caution. We were not even exchanging words. It was an interplay of breath, pressure, and the granting of permission. He pressed his lips along the curve of my neck once more, this time with a deliberate slowness, as if he sought to etch the sound I made into his memory when I leaned into his touch. As he raised me gently, I flowed in harmony with his motion. My legs grew taut, my lips sought his once more, filled with a deeper hunger, more erratic, more genuine. It all seemed spontaneous, as if it had never been practiced or planned. It was as if I was yielding, yet my gaze remained unclouded, and I yearned for it to continue. The cadence slipped away from me, and I could no longer gauge the duration of our movement in that manner. Time folded in on itself with each shift, each muffled sound, each breath that eluded me. I found myself responding instinctively, as if my body remembered something my mind had long forgotten. His grip mirrored mine, a perfect fit, heavy and pressing, as if it had been longing for this moment far too long. I didn't sense myself as a woman coming apart at the seams. I sensed the essence of arrival within me. My hands grasped his shoulders, then traced his jaw, finally weaving into his hair as if seeking stability in that connection. My breath quickened, racing beyond my control. His voice lingered in my ear. I found it increasingly difficult to discern what originated from him and what stemmed from within myself. Emotion surged through me, raw, unfiltered, impossible to name yet undeniable, every fragment of me stretching, tugging, unfolding. As he leaned in, his forehead meeting mine, an unexpected sound escaped my lips, one I hadn't realized I was holding back. There existed neither boundary nor demarcation, nor any justification to ease the pace. We had moved beyond the realm of curiosity regarding its significance. I was the one who surrendered first. His name lingered in the air. In the breath, I found myself unable to hold on. I clung more fiercely, my lips brushing against his shoulder, my arms enveloping his back. I had no desire for space. I had no desire for time. I simply wished to remain within that moment, as if I could elongate it by holding my silence. In that moment, certainty enveloped me. There was no room for doubt or inquiry. I released my grip, yet he remained present. In that instant, I relinquished all restraint. There are instances that require no words, merely a glance, a touch, a choice that remains unaltered. Speak truthfully. Do you long to be there as well? What would you be engaged in if you found yourself in that position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I am currently immersed in a book. Be sure to like, subscribe, and activate notifications to stay updated on all that's coming your way. Thank you for tuning in.